Great, thank you. Sit. All right, my name is Bettina Gilbert. I'm a program manager for RAP. I lead our work with businesses in Wales. Just really quickly, I'll just introduce you to, that's the wrong way, to RAP. So RAP, we're a partner in the EREK project, and we were involved in the original UK Industrial Symbiosis project. The way that we work is we seek to reduce waste and increase resource efficiency. We work with business, governments, and consumers. And our focus really is on food waste prevention, resource management, sustainable plastics, and clothing. So we have a very specific focus on certain materials, and our approach to industrial symbiosis is really embedded in our work looking at these materials. So we also take a very systems-led approach. We identify where waste arises, and we work with stakeholders and partners to determine why the waste is arising and how these linkages interact across the system to make sure that we don't have any kind of unintended consequences. We take this whole systems view. And then we also look at barriers and opportunities, and we work with the value chain to agree actions and priorities, and also to set targets. So this slide here is an example of some of our work on our plastics pack, the UK plastics pack. You might be familiar with it. This is from our strategy to develop, it's from our work to develop a strategy for recycled content in the UK. So it's looking particularly at HDPE plastics and what's supposed to be a closed-loop system. We're looking at milk bottles here, basically, so bottle-to-bottle recycling. But you can see, actually, that there's quite a lot of losses in the system. So this is what it's telling you, is that in household waste, we actually have a loss of 35% of materials. And so this is the way that we work. It's just an example of how we work. So this approach is taken also with our work on food waste prevention and our work on the food waste prevention plan. So this was developed in partnership with the grocery industry body in the UK, and it's our work on food waste prevention and valorization that I'll talk to you about now. So really our work on industrial symbiosis in relation to food waste focuses on valorizing food waste and actually avoiding food waste and considering it, there we go, as a byproduct. So the way that we do this is we take what we call a target, measure, act approach, and we really believe that by understanding where waste occurs in the very first instance is how you need to address that waste. And so a core element to our waste reduction and valorization or industrial symbiosis work in this area is to identify where waste is happening and to put systems in place to monitor and report these using standardized reporting tools. So RAP has worked really closely to develop a global standard reporting tool for food waste. And once we've identified that waste, we can then look at what actions we need to reduce the food waste across the supply chain. And so this approach provides a framework to identify and act upon opportunities, not only to minimize, but also to valorize waste. So you can see here that we work to the, we work to the Sustainable Development Goals 12.3 to reduce food waste by 50%. By 2030, and prioritizing high-value valorization or high-value industrial symbiosis. So in Wales, what we've done is we've kind of taken this one step further. We've also developed a map. So this is a map of what opportunities are possible in the bioeconomy in Wales, where food waste can provide a valuable feedstock to important products used across the economy. And therefore, we've developed a number of tools, so this map is just one of them, to help us identify opportunities, sources of materials, and potential users of these materials. And then also look at the economic and environmental factors that need to be taken into consideration. So looking at where we have to transport materials, proximity can be a real make or break decision when it comes to industrial symbiosis, and looking at the environmental impacts and also the cost benefit analysis. So this is basically what we call the Smarty tool. So all of those dots are different industries. There are people in the bioeconomy in Wales who either have materials, waste materials, or are using waste materials. This is an interactive tool. It's actually posted on our website. And if you click through, you can look at exactly who that company is, what materials they're using. You can look at their waste arising, so you see materials that can be used for valorization opportunities. And in particular in Wales, we found that the drink sector offers lots of opportunities. So what does this valorization look like in practice? Really interestingly, on a very basic level, when I was flying my way over here from the UK, I was reading the Fin Air magazine, and there was a really good example actually of a brewery in Helsinki, a microbrewery called Bruniverse. And what they're doing is they're making beer from barley byproducts, replacing malt barley with waste bread from a national bakery. And what they do is they make a bread that's called, I'm not going to try to pronounce it in Finnish, but it translates to English as leftover beer. So that's what happens kind of on the input side, but what about the waste from the brewery sector? So what this does is we've kind of mapped what that brewery sector looks like in Wales, and some of the opportunities that are happening not only in the UK but actually across Europe in terms of development of valorization opportunities for food waste. So some examples including using a small proportion of spent grain and draff, which is like the waste material from the brewing process, as a substrate for growing specialty mushrooms. This draff is quite often used as a fertilizer already, so this is kind of adding a little bit more value by putting it into really specialty mushrooms. So we're talking about, shiitakes and things that you might buy in the grocery store that cost a little bit more. You can also establish a process for drying spent yeast for sale as a yeast commodity product, so things like Marmite. Also, you can look at using a distillation process for polyphenol extraction. So polyphenol is an antioxidant used in the healthcare and food processing industries. So now we're talking about actually taking a waste from a food product and adding a lot more value to it. You can also use hydrolysis to create acetone, butanol, and ethanol. You can use protein extraction for use in animal food and pharmaceuticals, so again, adding more value. And there's some research that's being done in Europe around actually creating xylitol, which is a food sweetener from brewery waste. So I'm going to move forward a little bit. Great. And skip past this slide. This just shows you a little bit more detail of one of the very top chains in the previous slide. So it's what it looks like in practice. And this is Celtic Brewery in the UK, in the process that they use. So last year in Wales, we actually investigated what the bioeconomy in Wales means, what it looks like. And we found many examples of research projects and businesses that all contribute to the Welsh bioeconomy and drive the development of higher skilled jobs. So it's really what Peter was saying, that actually these are quite high skilled jobs that we're looking at. And it also increased the productivity of Welsh businesses. And we created a picture of the scale of predicted bioeconomy growth. So this is opportunities for industrial symbiosis and valorization without positive intervention. So there's quite a lot of growth that's happening organically on its own, but we recognize that with investment, this growth could be accelerated. And we found that the food manufacturing will remain a hugely important sector in Wales. So this is the yellow bars there. So it's going to remain, it's quite big, but it's going to remain about static. But really what was interesting was to see the growth potential in the research sector, which is the green bars up there. And that's happening through the exploitation of existing centers of expertise. Great, okay. So we do actually have a lot of work that we do in this area, working specifically with SMEs. We've developed a number of tools and provide actually technical support. So the very first thing that we do is we usually go in with a business and we start by mapping their waste. And this is followed by business case development. But what we've done is we've developed a business case toolkit that again is available on our site, because what we want to do is we work with businesses. I think they need the support, so you'll see that later in one of my slides. But we also want to give them the tools to do some of this themselves if we aren't there to hold their hand. And then recently we've launched a capital grant scheme in the UK to support some of these activities. That's through DEFRA. And we also have the mapping, which you've seen, and a number of case studies. Another thing that we do is we provide technical support, so we get an expert in there to really look at what the opportunities are, always seeking out those higher value opportunities. So these are just a few quick examples. We've already talked about the distilleries and the brewing opportunities. So Get Wonky is somebody who produces fruit juices from apples, from misshapen surplus fruit. So that's already kind of an industrial symbiosis opportunity that's happening there. But RAP gave them some technical support, and we established that the pomace, so the waste at the end of the juice making process, could be used to produce pectin, which is a high value product. So that was a really good opportunity for them. Brooksgrove Farm is a farm in Pembrokeshire, so it's quite a rural area, and they produce strawberries and raspberries. And if you make strawberries, if you produce strawberries and raspberries, you have strawberry and raspberry waste. This can be up to 50% of their yield. So it's quite a loss for them, all this fruit that they've lost. And so we found that they could actually convert this fruit to high value fruit syrups, and that they could turn this loss-making product into delivering a profit of over £200,000 a year, which is quite substantial for a small business. Okay, and what lessons have we learned? I think RAP will always say data, data is king. It underpins everything we do. So measurement is key to identifying these opportunities and really looking at the high value opportunities. SMEs really need support to grasp these opportunities. And this is why we've kind of put together some of the tools that we've done. I've already mentioned scale is quite important. So this is not only scale the production opportunity, but scale in terms of distance, supply chains, all of that, in terms of developing the business case. And SMEs quite often also need help looking at regulatory advice and guidance. So thinking about something that was a waste and now it's as a byproduct, is going to be a different regulatory regime. They're going to need support with that. In terms of policymakers, again, we would advocate always this systems-based approach, and also continued investment in capital and research and development. So I'm not going to really talk through the next slide, but basically there's a lot of people who are working in this area of bioeconomy and industrial symbiosis, food waste valorization in the UK. These are just some of the resources. I wanted to include these for when we share the slides later. And that's it.